Sports School is brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Real Agriculture comes to you today from Bloomingdale, Ontario. We're here with Aaron Stevanus, market agronomist for Pride Seeds. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, now we're here on your home farm on this blustery day.
You betcha.
And we are going to talk about crop nutrient budgets.
That's right.
It's always great to know what's gone into the ground, a little bit of history on the ground, just like your farm.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So if you look at this field, we're in a cornfield right now. This will be the second year of it being no-till. Soil fertility levels are actually fairly good on this. It runs between a clay loam and a sand loam, so it's really got two totally diverse soil types. And we're looking at a potassium level of about 120, which is right where I want it to be, and our phos is actually fairly good at about 30 pounds of actual. I also have a micro analysis of this field, but I won't go too in depth into that because we're going to probably more talk about P and K.
Yeah. Now let's talk about phosphorus for a second.
Yep.
Lots of reports that overall phos numbers dropping across the province. What do growers need something to keep an eye on? Right?
Yeah, and phos is, especially in corn, is so important. Like if you look at your accumulation of phosphorus as it gets taken up into the plant and then actually put into the grain, which is a lot of work that Fred Below has been doing out of the States, phosphorus is a very, very important nutrient. Not only, we've always known it in the starter fertilizer for root growth. So essentially when your corn root hits that band of fertilizer, it really promotes root growth. So we know it does that, but also we're finding it's really needed later on in the season as well to kind of help with test weight and kernel development. So phos is very important. So I really like to look at it as a bank account.
No, that's what you were saying, Nate. It's a bank account, especially now. I mean, we're producing some pretty impressive yields.
Yes.
So there's a lot of draw on that bank account.
That's right. That's right. So if you look at it from a fertility aspect, I like to look at it as kind of like a removal per bushel. So there's a lot of factors. You can look in the OMAF's Soil Fertility Handbook. They have a really good chart there on pounds of actual nutrients per bushel for both P and K, which I think is a very good resource. So if you look at it that way, we have to fertilize it for what we're removing. As our genetics have gotten better, we have traits that protect that corn to keep it healthy, so it's staying greener longer. And then also if you're using things like fungicides and high fertility, you're actually drawing more nutrients than ever before out of the soil, which also means we're getting better yields. But if we're not keeping those nutrient levels up to par, then really we could see more of a yield plateau or maybe even a fall off as they start to fall off. So you could, Greg Stewart's done a great job of showing us in his work that as fertility levels start to drop, we really see a huge return on investment on starter fertilizers, which I think is great. But we also need to look at it as maintaining that soil. So you don't want to cut starter fertilizer or broadcast fertilizer out in corn because we need to keep that fertility there that we're taking out. So you might not see as big of a return on investment, but it's more of a long-term investment. It's like putting money into my RRSP right now for when I retire. That's kind of what you're looking at. You want to keep that equity in the soil so you can continue to maintain your high yields, plus build on top of it as everything keeps, as new genetics come forth and we keep on getting more yields.
So Aaron, let's talk about building budgets, maintaining budgets, and you know, it's springtime now. What do we need to sort of, you know, calculate to be able to have a budget that we can, you know, make some decisions on? So first of all, how about corn?
That's a great question. So starting with corn, I like to look at the running average of the field because really, like I said earlier, it comes down to taking that yield and putting nutrients to it. So we know that corn takes out, this is from the OMAF Fertility Handbook, it takes out 0.42 pounds of actual nutrient of phosphorus per bushel, and it takes out 0.29 pounds of actual potassium per bushel. So if say your average yield in corn is 180, your fertility is good, you know, a management is just essentially doing that math. So 180 times 0.42 for phos, 180 times 0.29 for potassium. That's essentially just maintaining what the crop is taking out of the soil, so that if you're wanting to build, you would probably add a little bit extra to that.
So Aaron, let's talk a little bit about how residue and trash plays into budgeting. Now, you know, for example, this field right now, I mean, you've got a pretty good residue cover.
Yep, that's exactly right. And residue plays a big part of nutrients. Like just a side about wheat. So if you're taking the straw off your wheat, you actually have to fertilize more, because with that biomass coming off, you're taking nutrients. So we'll just kind of look at this corn residue here. So you can see, you know, it has kind of flattened out because of snow cover. We do have a fair amount of residue, and this residue is actually, you can see it as a part of your nutrient bank account, because there is something there. So what I did before is I went to, once again, OMAF Soil Fertility Handbook, and I just did some quick math on comparing the corn removal to the silage removal. So what they have in their chart is 150 dry bushels of corn, what it removed. Then I compared that to the silage on what it removes, and that was at 8 dry ton per acre. And so essentially what I'm doing there and subtracting those numbers is grain corn renewal, we're just taking the grain out of the field, leaving the stover. Silage, we're taking the whole plant. So you're getting a rough idea when you subtract what the silage removes. When you subtract what the grain corn removes from the silage, you get an idea of what this stover is like. Now, it's not 100% accurate, but it's a good idea. So what I found is that you're getting about 60 pounds of actual phos from the stover and 160 pounds of actual potassium from the stover. Now, it's not right away. It's not, you're not going to have that availability as soon as you get your crop in the ground. The microbes have to start breaking down the residue, and that is starting to happen as we're starting to get warmer temperatures. So it's more of a year-long investment, 2-year-long investment, versus being instant like you do with commercial fertilizers.
Now, the last thing I want to talk about is soybeans.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of discussion about corn, but give us some tips or some thoughts on budgeting for soybeans, Eric.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. Soybeans are really, well, we know that they're a big potassium user. And as we've actually seen, more and more studies are showing how important actually potassium is to that soybean, because aphids actually are able to sense potassium deficiencies. If you have a soybean crop that's low in potassium and aphids are in the area, they will probably go after that field versus a field that is sufficient in potassium. So it's really important, once again, to look at that budgeting. So similar to corn, we're looking, we do it as a per bushel basis. So we're looking at removal of 0.93 pounds of actual phos per bushel on soybeans and 1.56 pounds of actual potassium removal in soybeans. So soybeans are a big potassium user. I can't stress that enough, and making sure you're fertilizing enough to that is so important. Another add-on to that is nitrogen and potassium, actually have quite the correlation, because having a good level of potassium helps nitrogen get into the plant. Now, I know we don't fertilize nitrogen on soybeans, they nodulate, but they are actually a very high nitrogen user. So that, once again, throws into the fact, making sure your potassium levels are good, so you're helping the plant get that nitrogen into the plant and help produce higher yields.
Now, it really comes back to the bank, right?
That's right.
We've got big yields, big crops, and especially when you own land.
Yep. I can't stress it enough. If you have the investment, you've already put that investment into your land, you own it. Either you've paid it off or you're paying interest on it. You need that land to be productive. So if you actually want to look at it on where do you put your investments, what's your best return on investment, it's your owned land. So make sure, I can't stress enough, you fertilize the land you own properly. If you want to cut back on fertility, just to minimal levels, do it on your rented ground, but as our yields continue to go up, we're going to continue to pull more out of the soil. So the land that you own, it's so important to keep that value there.
Well, good stuff, Aaron. Thanks for your thoughts today, and let's get planting.
I agree. Can't wait for plant 14.